While driving my husband and his friends to a spa weekend, I heard him say, "She's like a puppy. Feed her, and she's loyal. So easy to control." They laughed, knowing I heard. I drove 5 hours in silence. Yesterday, he showed up crying, begging to talk, but I'd left. His words woke me up. Now I'm free, and he's alone. My revenge is my new life, so here I am, sitting in my new apartment with a glass of wine, finally ready to tell you guys what went down. This happened 3 months ago, but I'm still processing everything. Fair warning, this is gonna be long, but trust me, it's worth the read. Picture this. Friday morning, I'm loading up our Honda Pilot with enough spa supplies to pamper a small army. My husband and his 2 best buddies had planned this guy's wellness retreat at some fancy resort about 5 hours north. They'd been talking about it for months. Massages, meditation, the whole 9 yards. Real modern masculinity vibes, you know? I volunteered to drive because, honestly, I figured it'd be nice to get away for the weekend, too. Drop them off, maybe explore the mountain town, hit up some local shops. Plus, my husband had been stressed with work lately, and I thought this trip would help him decompress. The 3 of them piled into the car around noon. My husband shotgun, his college buddy Jake, and work friend Marcus in the back. I had my Spotify playlist ready, snacks packed, and was honestly excited for the road trip. We'd done drives like this before, and they were usually pretty fun. For the first hour, everything was normal. We stopped at a Starbucks, grabbed some energy drinks, and I listened to them catch up on life stuff. Jake was going through a divorce, Marcus just got promoted, typical guy talk. I was half listening, focusing on the road, occasionally chiming in when they asked about directions or food stops. Then somewhere around hour 2, I guess they forgot I was there. It started with Jake complaining about his soon-to-be ex-wife. Standard bitter divorce talk, nothing too shocking. But then Marcus started talking about managing his girlfriend, and that's when things got weird. He was giving advice about how to keep women in line, stuff that made my stomach turn, but I figured it was just locker room talk. That's when my husband decided to share his wisdom. "Honestly, guys, it's all about understanding the psychology," he said, and I could hear the smugness in his voice. Take my wife, for example. She's basically like a well-trained puppy. You feed her, whether that's compliments, a nice dinner, or some flowers from the grocery store, and boom, she's loyal for weeks. So easy to control when you know the right buttons to push. The car went quiet for a second, and I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel. My heart started beating faster, but I kept my eyes on the road, hoping I'd misheard. But then Jake laughed. "Dude, that's cold but genius. Like positive reinforcement training?" "Exactly," my husband continued, warming up to his topic. "Women are emotional creatures, right? So you just have to manage the emotions. Keep them happy with small gestures, and they'll do whatever you want. It's honestly embarrassing how simple it is." Marcus chimed in. "Bro, she's literally driving us to our spa weekend right now. That's some next-level training right there." They all burst out laughing. I'm not gonna lie, I almost pulled over right then and there. My vision got a little blurry, and I had to focus really hard on not crying. But something told me to keep driving, keep listening. Maybe I needed to hear how deep this went. "The key is consistency," my husband continued, like he was giving a lecture. "You can't spoil them too much or they get entitled, but you can't ignore them either or they get needy. It's like training any animal. You have to find the right balance of reward and withholding." Jake asked, "What if they start getting suspicious or demanding more?" "That's when you flip the script," my husband said. "Start questioning their behavior. Make them think they're being unreasonable or too sensitive. Works every time. She'll apologize and try harder to please you." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. They talked about me like I was a pet project, sharing strategies about manipulation and control. My husband detailed specific examples of times he deliberately made me feel insecure to get what he wanted. He laughed about how I'd apologize for things that weren't even my fault. The worst part? They knew I could hear them. About halfway through, Marcus said, "Dude, your wife can hear all this." And my husband just shrugged and said, "So, what's she gonna do about it?" More laughter. Update. "Hey guys, thanks for all the support so far. This is harder to write than I expected, but your comments are giving me strength." Someone asked if I confronted them in the car. I didn't. I was honestly in shock and trying to process what I'd heard. But trust me, I was planning something. The question is, was I right to stay quiet and plan my next move, or should I have called them out immediately? I drove the remaining 3 hours in complete silence. They eventually moved on to other topics, but the damage was done. Every word my husband had said kept replaying in my head. 7 years of marriage, and this is how he really saw me, as a trained animal. When we finally reached the resort, I helped them unload their bags like nothing had happened. My husband gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, "Thanks for driving, babe. You're the best." The casual affection felt like a slap in the face after what I'd heard. I was supposed to pick them up Sunday evening, but as I drove away from that resort, I made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not for him, not ever. I spent that weekend in a hotel room, just thinking about our relationship, about all the times I'd felt like something was off but couldn't put my finger on it, how he'd subtly undermine my confidence, then swoop in to reassure me, how he'd create problems just so he could be the solution, how he'd trained me, just like he said, to seek his approval for everything. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, not just sad, furious. This man had been deliberately manipulating me for years, and he was so confident in his control that he'd openly bragged about it to his friends. While I was doing him a favor, driving him 5 hours to his spa, weekend. Sunday evening came and went. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts. First confused, then worried, then angry. I ignored them all. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and went straight to a lawyer. I'd been thinking about divorce in abstract terms, but after that weekend, it became concrete. I wanted out, and I wanted to do it right. The lawyer was amazing. Turns out I had more options than I realized. We'd been married 7 years, and I'd contributed significantly to our joint assets. The house we lived in? I'd used my inheritance from my grandmother for the down payment. The car they'd ridden in to mock me? Technically mine since it was in my name. Over the next 2 weeks, while my husband tried to manage the situation, with his usual manipulation tactics, I quietly got my life in order. I opened my own bank account and started moving money. I found a new apartment across town. I even started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal when I got home that Sunday night. He was waiting up for me, full of apologies for letting the guys get carried away and explanations about how it was just guy talk and didn't mean anything. Classic manipulation, minimize, deflect, make me feel like I was overreacting. But I wasn't the same person who'd driven him to that resort. Something had fundamentally shifted inside me. I smiled and nodded and let him think his usual tricks were working, all while planning my exit strategy. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning while he was at work, I moved out. Left a note on the kitchen counter next to the divorce papers. Simple and clean. I'm not your puppy. I'm done being trained. My lawyer will be in touch. I took my clothes, my books, my grandmother's jewelry, and my dignity. Left everything else behind. Honestly, it felt incredible. Like I was finally breathing after holding my breath for 7 years. Update. Wow, you guys are incredible. The response to this story has been overwhelming. A few people have asked about the logistics of leaving. Yes, I had help from my sister, and a few friends who knew something was up. And yes, I documented everything I could, including recording our conversations after the spa weekend when he tried to gaslight me about what happened. Legal protection is so important in situations like this. But here's the question that's been bugging me. Do you think I should have given him a chance to explain or apologize? Part of me wonders if I was too hasty, but another part of me knows his apologies would have just been more manipulation. The next few weeks were rough, not gonna lie. He tried everything in his playbook. First came the anger, calling me crazy, ungrateful, saying I was throwing away our marriage over a stupid joke. When that didn't work, he switched to desperation. Showing up at my work, sending flowers, writing long emails about how much he loved me and how sorry he was. But here's the thing about manipulation. Once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. Every gesture, every word, every heartfelt apology was just another attempt to control me. The difference was, now I recognized the pattern. The breaking point came about a month after I'd left. He showed up at my apartment building at midnight, crying and begging to talk. My neighbors called the police because he was making such a scene. When the officers arrived, he tried to play the victim, told them his wife had abandoned him over a misunderstanding, and he just wanted to work things out. I calmly explained the situation to the police and showed them the restraining order I'd filed earlier that week. Watching him get escorted away from my building was simultaneously heartbreaking and liberating. This was the man I'd loved for 7 years, but he wasn't who I thought he was. The divorce proceedings took about 4 months total. His lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive and unstable, but my documentation was solid. The recordings I'd made of his gaslighting attempts after the spa weekend were particularly damning. Amazing how differently someone behaves when they think they're not being held accountable versus when their words might be used in court. In the end, I got the house, the car, and a significant portion of our joint savings. More importantly, I got my freedom and my self-respect back. But the real revenge? The life I've built since then. I started therapy immediately after leaving, and it's been eye-opening. Turns out, I'd been in an emotionally abusive relationship for years without fully recognizing it. The constant, subtle undermining, the gaslighting, the way he'd manufacture crises to keep me dependent on him, it was all textbook psychological manipulation. With my therapist's help, I started recognizing patterns not just in my marriage, but in other relationships too. How I'd been conditioned to seek approval, to apologize for things that weren't my fault, to prioritize other people's comfort over my own needs. It wasn't just my husband. I'd been living this way for most of my adult life. The healing process has been incredible. I started saying no to things I didn't want to do. I stopped apologizing for having opinions. I began trusting my instincts instead of second-guessing myself constantly. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Career-wise, things took off too. Without the constant emotional drain of managing my husband's moods and needs, I had energy to focus on my work. I got promoted 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Started taking classes at night to expand my skills. Even began considering a career change I'd been dreaming about for years, but never had the confidence to pursue. My social life improved dramatically as well. I'd lost touch with several friends during my marriage, something I now realize was partly due to my husband's subtle discouragement of my independent relationships. Reconnecting with old friends and making new ones has been amazing. I joined a hiking group, started taking cooking classes, even tried online dating when I felt ready. The dating thing has been interesting. After what I went through, I'm much better at spotting red flags early. Guys who try to love bomb me, who seem too eager to isolate me from friends, who make subtle digs disguised as jokes. Nope, not happening. I know what healthy relationships look like now, and I won't settle for less. Speaking of my ex-husband, I heard through mutual friends that things haven't gone well for him. Turns out, when you're used to having someone manage all the emotional labor in your life, living alone is pretty challenging. His work performance suffered, he gained weight, and he's been struggling with depression. Jake, his buddy from the spa trip, apparently went through a messy divorce where his wife took him for everything. Seems like his approach to managing women didn't work out so well in family court. Marcus lost his girlfriend about 2 months after my divorce was finalized. She found some texts on his phone that revealed his true attitude toward women and relationships. I'm not celebrating their misfortune, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some poetic justice in how things worked out. They spent that car ride talking about women like we're animals to be trained and controlled. Now they're all alone, wondering why their relationships keep failing. Meanwhile, I'm thriving. I bought a new car last month, a Jeep Wrangler that I absolutely love. Nothing says freedom like driving with the top down on a sunny Saturday morning. I'm planning a solo trip to Europe this summer, something I always wanted to do but never felt confident enough to attempt. The apartment I moved into was supposed to be temporary, but I've made it into a real home, decorated exactly how I like it, filled with plants and books and art that makes me happy. No more compromising on decorating choices or apologizing for taking up space. Most importantly, I've learned to trust myself again. That voice in the back of my head that always wondered if something was wrong, I listen to it now. My instincts are sharp and I don't let anyone convince me otherwise. Update. This is probably my final update, and I wanted to address some questions. People have been asking. Yes, I'm in therapy and it's been life-changing. No, I don't regret leaving the way I did. Sometimes you have to prioritize your safety and sanity over social expectations. And to answer the biggest question, am I happy? Absolutely. For the first time in years, I wake up excited about my life instead of dreading another day of walking on eggshells. Thank you all for sharing your own stories and supporting each other. It means more than you know. The question I'll leave you with: if you heard someone talking about your loved one the way my husband talked about me, what would you tell them to do? Looking back, that 5-hour drive was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it was pleasant, it was devastating, but because it gave me the truth I needed to hear. Sometimes the most painful moments are also the most clarifying. I spent 7 years being someone's trained pet and I didn't even realize it. Now I'm nobody's anything except my own person, and that feels incredible. My ex-husband was right about one thing: I am loyal. But loyalty should be earned through respect and genuine love, not manufactured through manipulation and control. The people in my life now understand that. They value my independence, encourage my growth, and never make me feel like I need to earn their affection. The woman who drove those men to their spa weekend was scared, insecure, and desperate for approval. The woman writing this story is confident, independent, and surrounded by people who actually deserve her loyalty. That's the real revenge. Not just leaving, but building a life so much better than what I had that I can't imagine going back. Every day I wake up grateful for that conversation in the car because it gave me the push I needed to save myself. To anyone reading this who recognizes themselves in my story, trust your instincts. That feeling that something is wrong? It probably is. You deserve better than being someone's trained pet. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not controlled for what you provide. And sometimes, the best revenge really is just living well. The spa weekend that was supposed to relax my husband ended up liberating me instead. Funny how life works. Out sometimes. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a life to live, and it's entirely my own.